Hello, everybody. This is Coresair Mack, President of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association. And today I am joined by our special guest, Kevin Barton. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like I said, I saw you at the ICA conference doing your presentation, and I said, I have to get this guy to do an interview with me for our YouTube channel. And boom, here you are. Funny enough that you sat at my table right after your presentation. So that worked out perfectly. I didn't have to track you down.
Yep, it was meant to be.
Right. All right. So let's go ahead and jump right into it because all your fans want to know, how did you become interested in counseling?
Yeah, so I became interested in counseling for an actual unfortunate reason. I went to counseling for the first time on my own will in college, sophomore year of college. Got concussion. I was dealing with some like personality changes, anger issues, pretty common things to follow with a traumatic brain injury. I went to counseling to kind of work on those things and be a better person. And when I was in my therapy session, the counselor, I told them my whole backstory and everything while I was there. And the counselor was like, I don't know how to help you. You're an athlete, and this is something I have zero idea what to do. Didn't give me any referral sources, didn't really know what to do. And in that moment, I was like, all right, well, I don't want another athlete to go through this. So I'm going to be a counselor and kind of work in that space in this field to try to make sports psychology a bigger thing and help more athletes along the way.
Oh, wow. That is still wow. I don't
Yeah.
know how to help you. It's like, what do you mean? You're a professional. You're
Yep.
supposed to know how to help me.
Yep. It was like 20 minutes into the session, and our first intake session lasted about 25 minutes because of that. So it wasn't great, but it definitely sparked something in me to be passionate about the mental health side on top of the sports psychology side.
Mhm. Yeah, thankfully you're out here doing it. So that way someone else that is in the same or similar situation as you won't have to go through that.
Exactly. So everything happens for a reason.
Hmm. Yep, you're doing the Lord's work. And I'm not just saying that because it's Sunday. Right. Right. So then, speaking of that, so then what schools did you go to for your undergraduate and your graduate degrees?
Yeah. So I've been fortunate enough to graduate from the same university three times. I went to NIU for my bachelor's in psychology, master's in sports psychology, and then master's in counseling. So three-time Husky alum. Uh, Pretty grateful for it, even though there's not a ton to do in DeKalb. It's always cold. Still love it.
Yeah, that's so true. Fellow Husky alum. I agree. Great school. Not just saying that because I went there.
Definitely a great school.
Right. So then, speaking of that, so you're doing your degrees, you got your three, and now you're out there in the workforce. So how long have you been doing therapy for then?
So counseling therapy I've been doing, I started my practicum last year, so August 2021. Um, then did my internship, finished that up in 2022, got licensed 2022, and have been practicing since. But I started working in sports psychology and consulting with athletes and stuff after finishing up that master's in 2020. So about 2.5 years now of working with clients.
All right, nice, very nice. Only 2.5 years, and you've already accomplished a lot. All right, so here's a little bit of a sideways question for you then. All right, so what caused you to decide to go back for your master's in counseling after you got your master's in sports psychology?
Yeah, good question. So with sports psychology background, you can only really do mental performance stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into later on. But doing just the mental performance stuff, we don't really touch on the mental health aspect of it. And just like we talked about during my presentation at ICA, like athletes have problems with their mental health too. It's not just regular people, right? Athletes have anxiety, they have depression, they suffer from bipolar as well, and they have all these issues. And I felt like it was unjust for me just to focus on the mental performance, knowing they had these other issues, and knowing that I would have to refer out to other clinicians if there was something clinical going on. I felt like it's already hard enough to get the athletes in the door to talk about their mental health. So then to have to refer them out to talk to another person and have to like kind of stretch out that process even more, I felt like I'd be doing a disservice to my clients. So I wanted to go back, get the counseling degree, and do both. Uh, both pieces of it with my clients, and then also eventually want to go on and do my PhD just to continue to kind of further the research in the field and know how to teach the next generation of sports psychologists and counselors too. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Right. Well, like I said, you're already done a lot. Now it looks like you're going to be doing a lot more.
Yep. There's never a good time to stop, I think there's always more we can be doing, and that continuing education is such a big part of our field in general. So might as well keep getting degrees if I'm going to keep learning.
Right. That is so true. Bless you for doing it. I can't do it. Right. All right. So then, speaking of learning, growing, and developing, and things like that, so you have two master's degrees. So I'm pretty sure that, before you went back and got your master's in counseling, you were doing a specific job. And then after you got it, you were doing another job, or at least trying to combine the two. So then what places did you work at starting off in your profession? And what did you learn as a result from working at those places?
Yeah. So I did something a little bit crazy. I was graduating with my first master's right at the start of the pandemic, so
Oh,
May 2020, and no one was really hiring at the time. No
oh
one
no.
really knew what to do, and so on a whim, I was like, I'm going to start my own business. I've been working with athletes here and there, and I kind of know what I'm doing. Don't know a ton about starting a practice, but I'll figure it out along the way. So I started sports psychology private practice right after graduating. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks after graduating.
Oh,
And yeah, I hit the ground running. And it obviously came with its hurdles and bumps along the way, but definitely learned how to be like an independent self starter and follow my passion instead of just like sitting on my hands waiting for something to come along. And so that was definitely a cool learning experience for me. And then when I went back at the end of that summer, I started my counseling program. So I had just started my business and went straight into the counseling program. Did not realize how hard that would be. Obviously, a ton of time commitment there, right?
mhm.
You've been through the counseling program. There's a lot of classes. There's a lot of homework, a lot of reading, and then on top of seeing clients and doing all the behind the scenes work, it definitely taught me good time management skills as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then throughout the counseling program, I did my practicum at the CCTC at NIU, just like sure you did.
Mhm.
And then I went on to do my internship at a community agency called Wayne Winfield Area Youth and Family Services out in West Chicago. And that was a really cool experience for me. I loved it. It was working with mostly Hispanic population, minorities, worked with some transgender individuals, LGBTQ community, a lot of trauma, a lot of more serious mental health illnesses. And that really sparked my passion even farther for why I'm doing the work, because you get to see these communities that I haven't been exposed to much while I was in college, and going to serve those underserved communities and getting in there and helping them, making their days a little bit better, giving them the skills to go through life a little bit easier, and just seeing the reward come out of that was super meaningful for me. Um, and I mean, I learned how to be a counselor there really. Obviously, I learned it while I was in school at NIU, but actually being out in the field, being a clinician and having that supervision, more independence while practicing was definitely helpful. And then as soon as I was done there, I added counseling onto my private sports psychology practice, hired an LCPC, and we expanded to that. So yeah, learned a lot that helped me to be where I am now. So yeah.
Wow. Well, I would definitely say you're living both the dream and the nightmare, right, of a clinician.
Yep,
Come,
that sounds pretty accurate.
right, especially coming out of graduation, then starting your practice. A lot of people, especially other counselors in the field, says, well, you shouldn't do that coming out. You should wait a little bit, get your LCPC first, learn some stuff, and then start it. But you're like, nope, I am just going to do it. And whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just learning along the way. I know, like working in private practice, you can obviously learn quite a bit, but also you learn quicker when you're just immersed in it, right? It's like
Hmm.
learning a foreign language. It's a lot easier to go learn it when you go spend time in that country and trying to learn it because you're immersed in it all the time. You have no choice. And so with sports psychology too, like there's so few opportunities still since it's such a growing field. Didn't really have a choice but to start it and then to throw in the counseling stuff. I was glad I had 2 years of doing sports psychology practice before adding on counseling and stuff. Because I think if I did 2 years ago, I would have hated it. I would have failed, but
Yeah.
I at least went through all the hurdles and stuff to get to the point I am at now.
Right, perfect. So then you already answered the next question, which was what was the process that led you to want to start your own private practice? But that is, especially during the pandemic, really interesting how, you weren't able to find a job because, what a lot of counselors said that a lot of people were hiring because of the pandemic, but you had a different experience. So what was it more of there was just no room, or was it more of they were willing to take the risk of hiring someone else, or what would you say it is, if I could ask?
Yeah, I think it was just within the sports psychology realm, not being a counselor, it was a little bit harder. Just because with sports psychology, it's kind of reserved to a few agents or practices across the country that are really big, but they only hire every couple of years as is, anyways. Or it's working with a professional sports team.
Mhm.
Well, professional sports were on hold at the time too, so don't really want to bring in people, and then the travel restrictions. Chicagoland area is not really great for sports psychology as a whole. It's getting better, but it's not one of the main hubs where sports psychologists tend to flock to, even though we have several universities up here that have it as a program. Um, but yeah, just like the doors were kind of shutting. Like Team USA was on a hiring freeze, and they were like, it was probably 6 to 8 months before we hire anyone for any positions. It's like, okay, well, that's cool. That's an avenue shut. Premier Sports Psychology up in Minnesota, they were not hiring anyone at the time. So it was just a lot of doors and avenues just not open for sports psychology at the time, at the start of the pandemic. But obviously, we have all these athletes who now aren't playing and need support. And I was working with NIU athletes. I was working with athletes across all of Illinois and out in Maryland and across the ocean over in Europe and
Oh, wow.
in Belize and all these places. And I was like, okay, well, they obviously need this help still. So it just kind of made sense for me to just start my own instead of just like sit on my hands, wait for the pandemic to end. Because we were told 2 weeks and then a month and then 2 months. And I was like, okay, well, we don't know when this is going to end. But I know I can help people. So I figured I'd rather struggle a little bit and go through those bumps and bruises along the way. But as long as I'm helping people, I'm gonna feel great about it. So
Mhm.
uh, yeah, it's just kind of how the chips fell, but it worked out.
Right, definitely. So then, in regards to that, with you getting out there helping people with your private practice and things like that, what would you say was the biggest hurdle in starting your private practice?
Yeah, so the biggest hurdle would be the wonderful fight with insurance.
Mhm.
Because with a CMPC, it's not like LPC or LCPC or LCSW where we can bill insurance and stuff like that. CMPC is all out of pocket pay, and during the pandemic, when people aren't working or money is a little bit tighter, like it's a lot harder to get people to justify spending X amount of dollars per hour to meet with a CMPC if you aren't playing sports at that time. Even if you're having this whole identity crisis and wanting to be better for whenever sports come around, it's hard to justify that. So that was definitely a hard one. So it was a lot of doing free workshops with different teams and organizations just to get my name out there, get my foot in the door, try to like convince them that it was worth it and needed. And then slowly over time, it came around. And then also just that big time management piece, like I kind of alluded to earlier, because starting counseling program, running a business full time, seeing clients, all that stuff, definitely a big issue. And I think if I had to go back and do it again, I would have definitely wanted some more help along the way,
Mhm.
just because doing all that on my own to start it out was a lot.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. Man, that even makes me feel a little bit overwhelmed, right? But
Yeah.
you were able to do it right out of school, so, or even during school and then right out of school. So that just speaks to your resilience and all that fun stuff that goes along with it.
Yep. And I think it goes back to like my desire to learn too, because I had to learn how to build a website by myself, how to do the marketing stuff, and kind of learn all the business aspects, finances, and all that stuff. So I think it just helped that I'm passionate about learning because every day that there was a struggle, it was like, all right, let's do more and more and more, and let's get better and better, instead of just being like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. I want to take a step back. I don't want to do this anymore. It was, okay, well, how can we get through this? And what can we learn for the next time this comes up? So I just think the passion for learning sticks out a lot too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, I could talk to you about private practice stuff all day, right? Because now you just brought up stuff where I have a ton more questions on. But let's focus it a little bit more to, your private practice, because you chose the name, and then please correct me if I get this wrong, Empower Mental Performance Counseling.
Yeah. Consulting. But
Consult. Oh, consulting, sorry.
yeah.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. So it did start out as empowerment mental performance consulting, just because with sports psychology it is mental performance consulting. We don't use the word counseling without the LPC, LCPC stuff. So it started off as that, and then I branched off once I added counseling. We now have empower counseling under that same umbrella too. So you're very close because I do have both there. So I think just counselor very naturally we go to counseling instead of consulting. It's normal. But yeah, I chose that name just because, I mean, think about the work we do. We aim to empower people through understanding what they've been through in life, how to give them skills to go through and go forward with life. And I just think being empowered means a lot of good things. And whether that's as an athlete or as a regular person or any human, we want to empower people, right? To live a better life, to live a happier life, to achieve great things that they want to achieve in life. So I think empower encompasses all that. So that's kind of how I landed on that name, and I think it fits very well for the field. So
yeah, definitely. All right, so then as I was doing my research on you, right, perusing your website and all that fun stuff, I came across a couple of terms that I want to ask you about. So what does it mean to empower wellness and empower excellence?
yeah, so empowering wellness, right? This goes back to what we do as counselors. We try to empower those people, and hence the name. And I believe that once we achieve that wellness, we empower people to be well, that they can go and achieve excellence. And ultimately, the goal with sports psychology and mental performance is to empower my athletes to achieve excellence, or any of my clients. And without wellness, we can't achieve excellence. And excellence is kind of up to the beholder, right? So I can't go tell you what's excellent for you. You have to figure it out. You have to feel empowered enough to go achieve your own excellence. So for me, it's getting a PhD eventually. It's doing these presentations. It's doing this interview. It's starting my private practice. It's doing all that stuff. That's excellence to me. Excellence to LeBron James is winning NBA championships, right? So it looks different for everyone. And I believe that if I empower their wellness first and take care of their mental health, whether that's performance anxiety before a game, or they just lost a parent or grandparent and they're grieving, how are they supposed to be their best self if they're still carrying that stuff around? So we have to work on empowering that wellness aspect for them first, and then empower the excellence after that.
All right, definitely. Right, because a lot of people have different meanings for empower. So it's great to definitely get your meaning. All right, so then I'm going to switch up the questions a little bit because I want to get to this one next. So what does it mean to be a certified mental performance consultant?
Yeah, so with CMPC, sports psychology, being a certified mental performance consultant, it means that we do go through rigorous training and education to be able to help athletes learn the skills to be better mentally. And so that's teaching them how to do imagery and visualization for sport performance. It's teaching them how to erase negative self-talk for positive self-talk so that they cope with their pre-game anxiety better, or in a big moment that they are clutch instead of choking, right? So famously, like Kobe Bryant, in the last 2 minutes of any basketball game, he was the best player on the court. Whereas there are other times where athletes, for example, since we're in the Chicagoland area, John Lester for the Chicago Cubs back in the day, he could famously never throw to first base, and he had the yips, and that's a mental performance issue. So that is kind of the things that we work on. And so to become a certified mental performance consultant is just to create some sort of standard in the field so that we know who's actually qualified and able to work in this realm. no different than getting LCPC, LPC, all that stuff. I think it definitely has pushed this field of sports psychology further, because before there were people that would just say, "Oh, I do sports psychology work," and they weren't really certified, and they were just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, hoping that they made people better. They just wanted to work in the sports world, but they didn't have any of the education or training to do it. And so I definitely think it's a good thing. But yeah, I think with CNPC, it's a relatively new thing. It started in ASP, which is the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. They rebranded their certification to CNPC in 2018. So relatively new. So it's definitely a change, but it's a good one.
All right, definitely. So then what do you have to do to get a CNPC?
Yeah. So base level, it's at least a master's degree, typically in sports psychology, kinesiology with a sports psych minor specialization, or even a counseling degree is also a common route. But essentially, it's 14 knowledge areas, and half of them are counseling based and half are sports psychology based. Whether that's taking like helping classes like counseling skills, group therapy, all that stuff, or learning about diagnosis and mental health disorders, or learning about foundations of sports psychology, learning how to do applied sports psychology. And then on top of that, you have to do mentored hours, which is similar to supervision, but also different. So with supervision, traditionally, we're talking about our cases, doing, what's best for our clients and kind of going through our struggle and everything. Mentorship is more like, what questions do you have? How do you want to do this? What could you learn more about this? Which is also similar to supervision in that case, but just much less client focused and much more CNPC person focused. And so you have to do 400 hours of that, 200 which are direct contact with clients, so that you're getting those hours in and you're getting that feedback, so that you're doing high quality work. Then 150 are support hours. That's the note taking, the workshop development, the research, all that good stuff that we do when we're not seeing clients. And then 50 of it's mentored hours. So 40 is like face-to-face meetings, like just talking about the clients, cases, personal development, all that stuff, going over how to use assessments, how to use different skills in a session with an athlete, what the purpose of them are. And then 10 is just direct observation. So going to see a mentee's workshop that they're hosting, or watching a recording of a session with the client, and then sitting down with them, going over that direct feedback and saying like, all right, this is what I noticed. Here's how we make this better. Here's what I would do. You can do your way, but this is like what I've noticed this work. Let's talk about this and see what you can do going forward. And so after all that, then you get to submit your application, sit for an exam. Exam was like 140 questions.
Oh, wow.
It was a decently difficult test. I like to think I'm a good test taker, and I was sweating through it. I ended up passing though, so I don't feel like I had to be that worried, but definitely doing the practice exams beforehand, I was like, okay, this is going to be harder than I anticipated. And then, yeah, so it's a process. Typically, even getting just a sports psychology master's, I still couldn't even sit for my CNPC exam until after my first year of counseling, just because I need to take some of those counseling classes as well to count. And that's up to every school. So some programs do have all the classes in one program. Some you have to kind of share with other programs. So yeah, it's different for everyone, but it's definitely a less intensive process than going and get your LCPC or LPC, because as we know, that's a few-year process to do all that stuff. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No, I could definitely agree with the test. Right, true. I haven't taken that test, but even the LCPC exam is like you take the practice questions, or you take the practice tests, you fail them all multiple times over and over again, even though the answers don't change. And then you go in and then you're like, oh, wow, how did I pass this exam?
Yep. I feel like they purposely make the practice exams harder. But I think that's also a good thing for us, because then no matter what we face on the actual test, it's not going to rattle us that bad, because the practice was harder.
Right. Thank the Lord for that.
Yeah.
All right. So you have your own business, right? You're doing a lot of great things. And I always want to make sure people know about those great things or even things that are coming up. So, do you have any projects that you're currently working on or projects that you have completed that you want people to know about?
Yeah, so we've had a few projects in the past that have been super successful and we're super excited about. One is a partnership with a nonprofit sports organization called Beyond Sport Foundation. They are in the north suburbs of Chicago. They do a scholarship program for high school athletes, about 35 to 50 a year, where they pay for their physical therapy. They bring in tutors for them, college admissions counselors, and then they partner with us to do mental performance workshops once a quarter, and then also send all their athletes to get counseling through us if they need it, and they pay for those services. And most of these athletes are from underserved communities and don't have the resources to pay for these services. So it's really rewarding to partner with an organization like that and get those resources there to these kids who probably otherwise wouldn't have it. And it's just super cool to see what that organization's doing because like they bring in people for like financial literacy presentations to teach these kids how to have good money management or how to have good skills going into college and all that stuff. And I think it's just a super cool project that they have going on there. So it's an honor and privilege to partner with them. And then we partner with a few like soccer programs, clubs. I feel like since the World Cup just wrapped up, I should probably say football, but for being in America, I'll say soccer. But we partner with a few local clubs throughout the Northern Illinois area, which has been really cool to see us be able to crack that market and get engaged with kids from as little as 8 years old up to 20 and kind of really dive in, work with those individual teams on different individual areas of need. Um, and then other things that we do are going to conferences and presenting on different topics that are important. So like ICA, me talking about men's mental health and masculinity. I think that's a super important thing. And it's definitely not talked about enough. And especially within athlete populations, it's not talked about enough. And then just back last April, I think it was April, I went up to Montreal to talk on sports sociology stuff about how coaches can influence how athletes develop. That was actually looking at coaches in the juvenile prison system. And that was a super unique opportunity to interview those coaches and learn what they're doing to make these kids not have as high recidivism rates. So I think it's a really cool opportunity that we go and partner on research and presentations like this to bring to the community. As far as projects going forward, we're looking to continue our international growth. So that's an exciting avenue because with the CMPC, we're not bound by state or country lines.
Oh, wow.
So we get a little bit more flexibility there. So that's why I've been able to work with professional basketball players in Europe and cyclists in Central America. And so doing cool things like that is definitely something that we're prioritizing. And then we're also just looking to find more partners to kind of help grow our entity as a whole. And so we do have a couple of big moves that we're trying to make in the next couple of months as we go into the new year. Those are a little bit more under wrap right now, but there are some big exciting things coming and we couldn't be happier about it.
All right, perfect. Well, I thought you were doing a lot before. Now I know you're doing way too much now.
I am doing a lot, but I still prioritize my self-care, thankfully, because I got to take care of me before I can take care of others.
Yeah, exactly. Self-care is 100% important. All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Just a little bit, not too much. Who knows? Maybe I might just be dramatic in even saying that. All right, so when did you join the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association?
Yeah, so I actually joined it 2021, I believe. That sounds right. It was actually funny because at the conference, you said IMHCA, and I've actually never heard it said out loud before. I've always just read the acronym, like HCA. And you're like, do you know what that is? I was like, no, I have no idea. And then as you started talking, I was like, oh yeah, I'm a member. So I thought that was really funny. But yeah, I joined 2021 or somewhere around there. Whenever I had to renew my membership for ICA, I was like, yeah, I want to join that too. So
All right, perfect. Or else that would have been super awkward. I was like, what do you mean you haven't joined? Join.
Yeah,
Right.
I should have said that just for the fun.
Right. Yeah, you should have. All right. So then, have you considered running for a board position?
Yeah, I definitely want to. At some point, I know just with the projects I have coming up in the next couple of months, I haven't thought about it for this upcoming year. But I definitely think next year I'm going to try to run for it for the first time for some position. Don't know which one. I won't come for your position. Don't worry. But I definitely think it's important that we get different people and different voices into these different board positions just to kind of grow the insight and perspectives that we have. I know sports psychology and counseling is still new to mix together, and I think it'd be really awesome to have a sports psychology background on the board to help bring that perspective into it since mental health is growing in that field. I mean, just literally 2 days ago, we had a NBA player announce his retirement at 22 years old because he has crippling anxiety. And so being able to have that voice to come in and add my perspective to the board, I definitely think is a good thing. I definitely want to do it at some point, but I need a couple of things off my plate first. So we will get there eventually.
All right, definitely. And I'll say it's okay. Definitely come from my position because by the time you come in, I won't be in my position anymore. So it'll be 100% okay.
Fair enough.
All right. So then, as we're getting closer to the end of our interview, I mean, true, there's a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to pick your brain about, but that'll probably be better served in a separate interview. So we might have you back for part two. By might, I mean we definitely will. Right. But is there anything, though, that you would like to tell people starting out in the field or who have been in the field for a while?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would tell somebody is not to think you're not qualified enough. Like, take the risk, chase your dream. The only way to learn is through doing. You can't learn by just watching other people live your dream. So if I would have taken that approach, I wouldn't have started my own practice. I would have went back for a second degree or probably a third degree or first degree or any of them. So I do think it is important to just kind of go for it and put your best foot forward just to try to live the life you want. Um, I also think a lot of people just once they get done with their degrees, they think the learning kind of stops there. And like they have their minimum like continuing education requirements and stuff. But why stop yourself there? You can always be reading a book, you can always be listening to a podcast, you can always be doing something to be better. And the better you are, the better you're gonna help your clients. So I think taking a positive lens to learning and education and not just stopping when you get your piece of paper. I think that is a very important thing for young people in the field or people just starting out at school as well.
Right, exactly. Don't limit yourself because if you do, you'll never get to where you want to get to.
Yep, exactly.
All right, so then, before we get to the most important question, is there anything that you would like to say that I haven't had a chance to ask you about?
That's a great question. I mean, like you said, probably need another interview for all that. But yeah, I mean, there's always stuff to say. I think the other thing that I would say is that I'm also privileged enough to work at a second private practice, which makes me sound even more insane with all the stuff I already do. But I work with Grow Wellness Group out in Naperville as well. Um, Hugely successful private practice that's growing tremendously. And so it's cool to be a part of that as well and see both sides of the lens, working with just a normal counseling practice, working with kids with ADHD, teenagers with ADHD, and getting to work with couples, which is something else that I enjoy doing. So that gives me a space to follow my other avenues of counseling specializations while still getting to do my private practice. So I think that's the other big thing to say for this interview. Obviously, more things for another one, but yeah, I think that is the biggest one for this one.
All right, perfect. And well, another sub question before we get to the most important question, I forgot to ask you this, but are you guys hiring?
So right now, we've thought about it. We probably will in a couple of months when we get through the holidays and stuff, and probably looking at March or April. So soon.
All right, perfect. You heard it here, folks. March or April, definitely check him out. the name, Empower Mental Performance Consulting. Remember this time, right? And then hopefully you all get hired. So knock on everything, fingers crossed. I have faith in everyone. All right, so then now the most important question of the day, where can people find you or contact you?
Yeah, so people can find me and Empower on Instagram at EmpowerMPC. And then email, probably the best way to get a hold of me. So kbarton at empowermpc.com. Otherwise, LinkedIn, I'm there too. And yeah, so those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me and find me and reach out. I'm always open to more questions and interactions with people. I always like to know more counselors in the field or more aspiring counselors in the field, more aspiring sports psychologists. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'd love to have a conversation. And I try to always make time to talk to people, whether that's a 30-minute Zoom or a 5-minute text message. Like I try to find time for everyone.
All right, perfect. All right, you heard it here, folks. Contact him because he will definitely answer back. Right? All right, perfect. Well, other than that, that's it for this interview. Again, Kevin, thank you very much for doing this interview with me.
Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, we'll definitely have to do a part two because we didn't even get into any of the sports psychology stuff. And then some of the stories you told during the ICA presentation, working with different teams here, working with people outside the US, and all that fun stuff, and even picking more of your brain about the whole, I just got out of school, now I'm starting a private practice, what am I doing? Right, type stuff as well. So we'll definitely have to have you back for a part two.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait.
All right, perfect. Other than that, that is it, everybody. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. This is Coresair Mack, president of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association, signing out, and I'll see you at the next interview. Take care.